I will always say slow becomes the new fast, because when you do take your time, or at least in this context, when you do stop and you ask for help, that will force you to listen. If we want those employees to speak up and pretty much emerge from the shadows of fear, which there's a lot of, we've got to work to listen to them. The best people to learn from are your people. But in the interview process, I don't look for those things. I look to see, do they have an ability to actually read and write the way I need?
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zalle. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest and greatest episode of the Canary Report. I am very honored to have Tim Page-Bottorff, who is a friend. He is also not only a friend from the industry and lives here in Arizona and is a better golfer than I am. I came to find out a few months ago. But he's also a keynote speaker. He's an author. He's a senior director. He's also a father, husband, and a Star Wars fanatic. And this is actually a video podcast, so people will see the Star Wars behind you and recognize that. And giving a little bit about you in your opening, I will just say that this man has done more than anybody who is as young as he could possibly do. You're a senior consultant for Safe Start for 20-something years. That's what I know you from. But I've seen many of your speeches, and I know that you're a proud Marine and that you've served in Desert Storm, and I appreciate that and thank you. Your 30-plus year, HSE or SHE, as it says here, experience, which I actually appreciate that you put that in that order. And then you run your own podcast. I'm going to mention it so people can go and check it out. So you actually Safety Talk with Safe Start. I don't know if you're still running it or not, but it's great. In fact, we're going to touch on some of those things. And without going down all the accolades, I'll just say that he has been on the boards, he has been on the advisory, he has been on the senior level of everything that matters in this industry. And people absolutely have huge respect for you. And I thank you for being on here. So welcome, Tim.
What an introduction. I don't even know what to say. That I'm overwhelmed to hear all of that, but also thank you so much for that incredible introduction. I appreciate you, Michael.
Well, first, I got to start off with saying that when we were talking about this, we were going through some, what would we want to talk about? And we've got so much similarities in our history, but so many things are very, very different. And then you go, I think I know what I want to talk about. Because do you know who Robert Matthew Van Winkle is? And I said, why is that ringing a bell? It's killing me. And I couldn't come up with it. And he goes, stop, collaborate, and listen. So Vanilla Ice. And I listened to one of your podcasts that you talked about this, and I know this is a theme in your life. So that's going to be the theme of today's. And if I can possibly get our post-production to get rights to using the song, it will be in your intro, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that. So tell me about that, because you said that it would be interesting to focus around collaboration. I'm a big fan of that.
There's some irony in your statement in that the baseline that he took, he didn't even ask for permission or collaboration. He just took it. And so it's you could go back to Queen and David Bowie when they did that song Under Pressure. And then, so it makes a little bit of sense. And I've honestly, I got a little bit of respect for him because he added a kind of a little twill to the sound. But, and then somebody came along and said he stole his stuff from him. And it's just kind of a vicious world out there. But the word collaboration is what kind of percolates to the top. And the rhythmic way we say stop, collaborate, and listen was what was important to me. And it was like, all right, stop. Like, what are you doing currently? And then the question came, are you collaborating or collaborate? And then finally, are you listening? And so those three words have resonated to me, and they've become a personal strategy moving forward for me, at least for the next 3 years. And I'll ask everybody that I interact with, networking wise, are you stopping what you're doing and thinking about what you're doing? And then if you need help, instead of pushing through, do you ask for help or collaboration? And then finally, when somebody does collaborate with you, do you listen to what they have to say? So, kudos to Robert Van Winkle and I honestly Vanilla Ice. And I think that there's a bunch of sayings in that song alone that you can actually take, extrapolate, and make almost a life lesson, or for me, a personal strategy. And this will be mine for at least the next 3 years.
You and I have had a lot of different conversations, but they've always been relatively high level, just because we haven't been in a place where we could have a deeper talk. Generally, there's a golf club in a hand, or we're at a meeting where there's too many people around. And so, it's not exactly the easiest spot to, have these discussions. But I find that those 3 words, especially the listen piece, and that's the piece that, everybody goes, oh, I am listening. It's like, no, you're not. You're not really listening, because you're not understanding the intent. And when you're listening, you have to also look at it through the lens of the person who's saying something to you. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do, particularly when you're just trying to get an answer. So you're often trying to get the answer that you want instead of actually trying to get the answer that the situation needs. So what made you, I love it. I love the 3 words. I like the fact it's a 36-month strategy around your life, and that you didn't say business, you said your life, which I like a lot. And I have more to work on in my personal life on this than I think I even do on the business life, because it's very easy to go too fast and not actually listen and not collaborate. Ask my wife, she'll attest to that. So what was there anything that, what prompted this?
Yeah, good question. The 3 years previous, before I started taking on this strategic implementation for me personally, was 2 acronyms that I was using before. The first acronym was VENT. And so in that saying, there was a lot of psychological safety stuff that was coming out with ISO 45003. And in the 4 quadrants of Timothy Clark's book of psychological safety, as you go around to those levels of, what an employee does in the world of safety, I recommend that, you use this acronym VENT. And so voice your concerns, explain everything in great detail. Question mark, is there a near miss? And then do you trust your supervisor to do the right thing? That acronym led to another one, which was making safety real, REAL. And for supervisors, do they respect their people? Do they have empathy for their people? Do they accept their people for who they are? And do they listen to their people? And so when I was presenting, as you introduced, as I was presenting at all these presentations and conferences, a lot of supervisors were telling me that they don't have time to coach. They don't have time to mentor. They just have time to do. And unfortunately, one of the things, and they were very frank with me, they didn't get a chance to listen. There was what spawned stop, collaborate, and listen. And if you don't have the time, and you said it earlier, and it came from some of my deep-rooted history with SafeStart, if you're rushing through things, you're going to have to go back and fix it. And unfortunately, a lot of us have made mistakes before where we've had to, we were in a hurry and we had to stop. We had to go back and redo it because, well, it was screwed up. And I wish I could say that on the golf course, that we could stop and go back and fix it. But unfortunately, once you take the shot, it's a done deal. And as you probably know, when you take a mulligan, that second one is an all-star, right? That second shot was always on tour. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't get that in the safety business, and I would prefer that people take it slower. And I will always say slow becomes the new fast, because when you do take your time, or at least in this context, when you do stop and you ask for help, that will force you to listen. And I think that when it's, the earlier acronyms, VENT and REAL, it kind of opened up my eyes, because I was now getting feedback from leaders, mostly supervisors, midline leaders. And a lot of that came through the discussion on Safe Lead. So I got a chance to meet a lot of middle supervisors that were out there, but they would also be very explicit, and they would be very open to give me feedback and to tell me that, no, I don't have this option. And so that was when I was like, you know what, I need to make something deeper and the song was resonating with me. And I just said, this is where it's got to go. So at least for the next 3 years, this is where it's got to go. And then again, it could morph into somebody else, or something else.
I was thinking about this recently in your journey specifically. So it's funny, we have overlap. So one thing that you may or may not know is that, and first, congratulations on the new position at JLL, and you're already hiring people on your team and growing the team, and I'm super excited about you. My very, very, very first investor at Yellowbird was actually a director from JLL, who I have known for 30 years, and he's actually he's my brother-in-law. He's my wife's sister's husband, but they were here. I was in California, but I have always been a JLL guy, like through and through, because, I said, John, I'm not going to take your money, man. I'm going to lose this. I'm like, the chances, I'm going to spend my own. He goes, no, I'm like, I believe in you and you can do this. And he and Liz did, they together. And, I'm like, okay, well, you'll always be my broker. So like, I've moved a couple of times. John has always been with us, and he's always been, he does not need my little leases. Trust me, he's very successful. But it's funny because during when I found out you were going to JLL, I was so excited because to me, it's as close to another company that I am like completely, I don't know what the right word is, but the team at JLL has always supported me a great deal. And so they're very fortunate to get you, even though I didn't, because I really wanted you to join my team. But along those lines, so now you're in a completely different role, and you still have this stop, collaborate, and listen philosophy that you're going to have to implore into your team and into your clients and into serving the network of the JLL brokers and the community of which you're going to be, overseeing. How's that going to change? Like, how do you see that? You've been hired to come in as the expert to help people improve and think differently and create better safety cultures. But now you're in an organization that maybe has different levers. What do you think about that?
I don't know if you've been talking to my boss, but those were actually the same exact words that she said when we're bringing you on board. So we need to get people thinking differently. We need to shift the way we do things. And I took that to heart. And now, frankly, there was a little bit of me that was selfish because I was burnt out with travel, and I didn't realize it as a consultant until the position was laid in front of me. And then I started to do a kind of a personal inventory. A good friend of mine, David Silva, and I, we've come up with this term for vigilant mindfulness. And we started looking at each other on what's our needs, it was kind of I don't know, it's like a hierarchy, but we sat down and said, here's what we need. And then through that process and the eventual offer, I actually figured out that I was burnt out from travel. And just being here at home, personally, I got selfish. I was like, I think I would rather be at home more now than I was then before. It was 100% travel. So I'm now down to about 20% travel. So that's first and foremost. But secondly, to come in, what else changed for me was that I thought I knew JLL like the back of my hand. But in 3 months, I quickly learned that I don't. Commercial real estate is something that I thought I had figured out, but it's a whole nother ballgame. And, in the work group that I'm in, it's called Work Dynamics. We basically handle facilities maintenance and all the employees that go in and do HVAC and all that type of stuff. I knew that. But what I didn't know that there was so much interaction between HSSE and contractor management and sourcing. So I've learned that, and that's a little different for me. But I've also learned that people have challenges. And what was a Marine kind of mentality before, like I'm just gonna fight through this, and I'm gonna bash through doors. I'm gonna try to get this stuff done, and I don't need anybody's help. Everybody has their own journey, and they've got their own challenges. And I'm more keen to learn to be more empathetic to those challenges, as opposed to saying, why don't you just lift your head up a bit and go knock this thing down like I usually do. And so I've learned to be more empathetic to their needs as opposed to being, a hard charger. Let's get this done because I said so. Now, I'm not sure I've had that over the last 20 years because I've been trying to motivate people through, some of the challenges that they've got, but I didn't realize that maybe I did, but I was really not keen on it. So that's what I've learned mostly in these last 3 months. And it's something that I'll focus as a mentor and probably driving a bit of change. I think that's going to be right in the realm of stop, collaborate, and listen, but listening to people, understanding where they come from, I think is a leadership characteristic that a lot of our supervisors and managers just don't have. And I'm going to hope to motivate them to see that this is what I see and this is what I can add. Hopefully they're listening to me as well.
So JLL is a massive organization, probably one of the largest in the country with just raw footprint. My brother-in-law was with Staubach, that was acquired by JLL many, many moons ago, at a Dallas-based tenant representation firm. And all of these value-added HVAC and plumbing and managing of all these different resources and so forth, what percentage of those folks actually have a JLL badge, and what percentage don't? And when they don't, what is your strategy around making sure they live the values of the stop, collaborate, and listen, but also what we stand for at JLL? And when you go there, this is what we expect how we want you to show up, what we want you to do, and how, frankly, you are an extension of us during that period of time, which I have that same issue at Yellowbird. So how have you gotten, you haven't been there very long, so maybe it's way too deep of a question for your first 60 days.
No, it's a great question. And I've got a sense. So I'll give you one company that I've got a non-disclosure agreement with, but they're a computer company based out of Texas. And I can't say their name, but it rhymes with REL. And so this organization, if you specifically look at them for facilities maintenance, it's 90% JLL, 10% that company. And so that's a huge percentage. Now on the HSE side, you're looking at a 50-50 split. We are collaborating across the board. Our primary job at JLL is to maintain safety and health for our employees. But right now, since I've joined, it's been identified that a lot of what we've done is what we refer to as HSSE as a service, similar to what you do. You provide at Yellowbird. And I'd suggest that if there was an opportunity for a client customer to come up to us and say, hey, would you review this lockout tagout program? We would have initially said no. Too much liability, too much risk. Now, we can't give you feedback on that because we're too busy managing our other customers. But the liability experts have come back and said, no, you can provide that as a service. So my people on my team, I don't necessarily know that they could provide that because there's limitations and capabilities. But does that mean that we can't get them prepared, similar to what you do, to get into a position?
You should stop, collaborate with Yellowbird, and listen. We should do something.
Yeah. I am on board with that 100% because it sounds like there's things that we're being asked of as a third party. We just don't have the resources or capabilities to manage. But when that side of the business gets really clear, because it's muddy right now, I think there's definitely a chance of collaboration in the future.
And again, this is never intended to be a sales discussion. And I like to have real dialogues about the challenges people have in their worlds. And it's so interesting because I'm thinking right now, and probably shouldn't be pulling this out on a podcast, but one of the things that I always say is that the certifications and the accreditations and the licenses are important. But your personal history and your experience and your knowledge and your wisdom are what makes you you. And you can have somebody who literally went through the same classes and took the same courses and everything else, but you were, in Desert Storm and learned a lot about things that I will never know. And, I was born with a disability, as you know, with one hand, and I have learned to adapt and address things and things that you'll never really understand. And all of that makes us who we are. And one of the things that I've been focused so heavily on at Yellowbird is I'm done focusing on the certification and the industry. I want to focus on people's superpowers of who they are based on their backgrounds, like really, really great. And one of the things I'm contemplating that maybe I'll lean on you for at some point is I think we might be able to do the tools that we're developing, because we've got some pretty decent AI tools now, and to help pull some of these things out, interviews and Q&A and things that are all digital, to kind of help people find their superpower, their passion. And I'm thinking about doing it for my partner companies, for their own people, because it'd be interesting to say, okay, well, I've got 40, health and safety people on my team. And I say, okay, well, if I said, I want you to do a fall protection analysis, or I want you to do a lockout tag out, which one of your people would be best to do it, regardless of geography? Just which one would be best? And most people would pause right there and go, I usually think about who's available, and these are good people and they're going to be able to do it. But who would be best? And that's the kind of thing that I get excited about when you're running your programs. And I probably just I probably just hurt the question, but when you're running your programs, obviously geography matters, but how do you look at these things? Like when you're saying, okay, I need somebody to do something. Do you go by geography? Do you go by availability? Do you go by the network of people you know? Like, how do you look at it?
You're asking me to start using a logarithmic or algorithmic scale that I could plug into a systematic software.
Well, yeah, it's your brain.
This great question. This answer might come as a surprise to a lot of folks, but when I bring on a team member, and I'm going to start at the very beginning because it only helps set this up, the certifications, professional development, undergraduate, graduate degrees, that's all stuff that I look for when I hire the team member. But in the interview process, I don't look for those things. And some of you may or may not like this term, but this is a term that I'm going to be using with my team. It's soft skills. So I look to see, not geographically, not certification-wise, not professional development. I look to see, do they have an ability to actually read and write the way I need? More importantly, do they have the capabilities of being able to develop a relationship and communicate those values to the customer? And so I get into those kinds of weeds when I'm looking to hand off a project, have somebody review, or even better, lead a team. Right now, I've got a team that's looking at contractor onboarding, because, contractor onboarding, we use several different companies, and it's not uniform, and there's not a perfect process. So I found somebody that was really good and keen in developing process flow. And so that might be a hard skill that's taught in college, but to follow through and communicate what the findings were is what I started looking for. So yeah, it's not geography, it's not certifications, it's not what type of professional development or classes you've had under your belt. Those are all base foundational things that I come to expect nowadays. But what I do look for is in the relationship that I've got with a team member, do they have the capabilities of delivering terminology I call soft skills?
Can you communicate? Yeah.
Yeah. To wrap that tie that up into a little bow, if they can't communicate with a customer on the needs and the expectations, then the customer won't have a clear line of what's to be delivered. Same thing, if the customer can't deliver the required scope, and then they start expecting more and more things, and all of us know scope creep, it wasn't defined in the beginning. You can't get that through certifications and professional development and hard skills. You got to get that through somebody that has the talent to be able to find it in the first place. And so I started leaning on those types of behaviors. And if I see them in the workplace, I'll write it down. I make a note. I got a note of communication of behavior types, and I start adding those folks to those projects. And that's what I really look for. And that collaborative piece to me is, if they want to do it, I'm going to ask. If they don't want to do it, I'm still going to ask. And they can still say yes or no. But then I go down the list, and hopefully that person's willing to commit. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but it's really not about geography or the types of hard skills that they've got. I'll look at the leadership characteristics, communication characteristics, all the things that are intangible that are almost impossible to be taught.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. See, this is one of the things that at scale, So we got about 7,000 people on the platform. And we're going to have a heck of a lot more pretty soon here. We're doing some fun things. And at scale, the hardest thing to do, and you are dealing with things at scale, but you tend to be doing them one by one from what I understand, but is understanding, even when you're getting to the soft skills and the ability to communicate and write in the way you want and everything else, is having a client communicate to you what they find success to look like. And that is what we're actually working on right now, which is really difficult to, I learned this the hard way. I was very successful at Yellowbird early, and we did not do very well with our earliest, biggest clients because I underestimated the interpretation of success. And if somebody goes, hey, I need to do these loss control surveys, I've got these 15 locations. And I'm like, okay, well, what does the deliverable need to look like? Oh, you know what? Any good loss control professional will know. It's like, they'll know. They've been doing this for a long time. And I'm like, well, do you have a template? No, you can use your own template. Well, which one? I've got 15 different professionals or whatever it is. Whose template should we use, right? Because that's the way it's worked in the industry so far, is that people don't want to give you the result that they're looking for. They want you to deliver something that's unique and powerful. And one of the things that I found out, and I always use this example, and this kind of goes back to that soft skill thing. If I said, on this loss control survey, I want you to describe this building. And one person says, it's a beautiful building at 5th and Grand, and it's well kept up, and it was built approximately mid-70s. And the next person, 5th and Grand, and gives a dissertation over 15 pages about postmodern era architecture. Well, more is not always better. And I don't know which one this client would have liked. Are they just looking, look, it's a tilt up, it was built in this year, and this is what it is? Or do they want more depth? And it's funny because I go back to that soft skill thing. I mean, there are people who want you to be seen and not heard, go in and do the survey, go in and do the assessment, be thorough, get out. If you're a ghost, that's a win. There are other people who get irritated because your person didn't talk to me. They didn't ask me enough questions. And so we had to learn when somebody comes on, if we call it prepare for a job. What prepare for a job is actually trying to read the mind of the guy who he's going to see on the edge. It's like, okay, what does that look like, right? So, how much do you, in your world, go through the prepare for a job side when you're sending somebody out? Like, do you get a good sense of what your edge client's looking for when you're sending your folks out?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, it's the whole Safe Start issue, it was a Safe Start onboarding thing that we did with a boot camp. And, I did a lot of recommending. I didn't do so much of the boot camping or onboarding, but I brought in people that I thought would be a good fit. Now, they were always asking, what's a good fit? And I would say, yes, somebody with a great safety background, but it's someone who can actually deliver, someone that can actually motivate employees to make a change. And so eventually that's what I was looking for. But to answer your question, when I send somebody out, specifically, I just had to hire somebody for another 3-letter company. And that person, I already envisioned who I wanted that person to be when I looked at the job description. That's who I want. And so I thought that would be a great fit. And come to find out they were available, and it just all seemed to work out. And now I hired that person. And to equip them, there's 2 things that I'm looking for. Number one, can I get somebody that's on site that can give them some type of mentorship that maybe I don't know? Because I don't know everything. I wish I did, but I don't. And sometimes when somebody asks me a question, I still don't know, and I gotta go do some research, which I'm okay with. I would hope that everybody else would do the same. But the second thing that I would do is ensure that they had all the tools that they needed to be successful. And it doesn't matter what tools. If it's a laptop, or if they decide they wanted a Mac to be more successful, then I'll work towards getting that. If they wanted to attend a professional development seminar to get there, I would do the best that I could in the capabilities that I have to equip them on that. So number one, find somebody on site that knows the location better than me. And then number two, equip them with the right tools. That's what would be important to me.
Interesting. Thank you. It's kind of funny because I didn't think of it from that perspective. And that's really helpful. That's really helpful.
Just to hold on a second. Yeah. For clarity, let's just go back to this Safe Start onboarding. Sometimes we get consultants that come in who feel like that we didn't do a good enough job at holding their hand. And then there are consultants, and this is who we end up leaning on, are the ones that actually take a little bit of resilience and they go and find what they need. And so those folks are more likely to succeed. And to bring this back to the question about what do I do to get an employee ready or somebody on my team to get ready, I won't necessarily ask if they've got resilience, but I'll check to see if they do. But I'll still impede and say, hey, what tools do you need? Here's a person that I think you should contact. But I'm also it's not a test. There's no resilient factor check. It's just how much effort are they putting forward to get information? And I don't want them to feel like they're bothering me, but at the same time, to provide clarity, and I think I know where you're going, I want to be as less ambiguous as I can, because that's the biggest psychosocial risk in psychological safety ever. Not knowing your job, not knowing your job description. So I'll still be there. I'll still provide the assistance. I'll still hopefully have them ask questions, but sometimes we do test resilience to see if they'll look it up on their own. And we kind of lean on that as consultants and people that work out in the field, because when you're out there in the field, you won't necessarily have your manager, your boss at the whim. So you might have to check and see on your own. Anyway, I hope that's where you're going. But if it's not, then let's go there.
Well, we're going there anyways, because I think it's such an interesting, one of the things in this industry and in all industries, not just this one, that it's hardest to interview for is that the grit. Somebody's willingness to acknowledge they don't know, go and do the research that they need, find out what's going to make us happy and successful, because happiness is a factor, even though people don't like to acknowledge that. If your client is not happy, even if he was successful from a data perspective, you lose. Your customer has to be happy with what they got. And that's not always easy to do, especially because a lot of our clients, as we know, are not always happy people. I wish they all were, but it just doesn't work out that way. I can't help their life situations. One of the things I was thinking about, and I was going to ask on the context side, is actually, so the services, when in this discussion, the services that you're talking about would be hiring somebody to go out to a site. So there's another competitor of yours that has 4 letters that we will not say, but they do kind of on-site staffing, where they place somebody, a safety person on that location. We actually compete with them a fair amount because we do a fair amount of that stuff too, where we always ask our professionals, if an opportunity for 9 months comes up, would you be interested in going on site for 9 months if you are a good fit? And a lot of people are like, no, I actually have a job right now. Like I work, I'm going to go and take a day off and do a training or take a weekend and do a policy assessment. But no, I can't take 9 months and go to the middle of nowhere to build a data center. That's outside my scope. Is that the kind of thing, like, do you guys do that kind of work? And I'm being really serious. Are you hiring these people to go out to a customer location for a long duration, or is that not the application that you're talking about?
Well, currently it's not a scope type of work that we're doing. However, it's something that's piqued the interest since that 4-letter competitor does that type of work. We've gotten several RFPs on staffing that we try to stay in our lane, and that's not our business.
You know where to send those.
Yeah. If one of our customers asks us to review something that we're partnering with them already on, then it's likely that we'll use the racing matrix to say, hey, we got a responsibility to do this anyways, and we're accountable to it. So here we are. Here's what we recommend, and here's what we're looking for collaboration. So we might do that. And, we've got a company that we're working for now that's most organizations know who they are, software platform out of Indianapolis. They have asked us to be their contractor safety management company. Well, there's companies that do that. So why would we want to recreate the wheel? And so what we end up doing is trying to collaborate and partner with the organizations that already do that work, and stick with what we know best. So that's where we're at now. Does that mean that we wouldn't do it later? To be fair, well, I don't, but if it's something that they ask me to do, I'm going to tell you right now, identifying burnout last year to take this job, I will tell you that I just don't think we've got the capabilities and the resources to handle that. Maybe we would in 5 or 6 years, but to me, I would turn it down. I just don't have the capabilities right now to take it. So partnering with teams like you and another group of people that maybe we could partner and be a third-party organization to do it together. I'm all about that because that helps us limit the liability. It helps us partner with another organization, and it helps us manage that enterprise risk that you talked about before.
It's so funny, Tim, because when we spoke about the change that you were making and, some of the reasons with burnout and travel and all these things, and this industry is built on that grinder. It is ingrained in this professional services industry of health and safety that, or if you're in the insurance world, in the loss control world, or if you're in the fire inspection world, you're traveling around for NFPA stuff. I mean, people live on airplanes forever. I mean, you just talk to folks, they're like, oh yeah, sometimes it used to be a badge of honor. I was on the road 9 months last year, it's like, wow, does your family, do your kids, does anybody know who you know you? Do they even recognize who you are? And it's funny because it wasn't the intention of our model to displace that or replace that. But I get more people saying, if I can send somebody local to go do this and I can just manage it, it's going to let me see my family and be home more. And I've had clients say this to me, because they are actually the one that was supposed to get on the plane and spend the next 4 days getting to godforsaken nowhere that they've never heard of to do something that is actually only a 1-day assessment or survey or training or something, and then spend 3 to 4 days coming home. And they're like, and then I'm going to be home for a weekend. I got to go do it again. It's insanity. And I never realized the burnout in this industry. It's really rough. And I travel a fair amount myself, but if I do more than a week or two and I'm not home for a week or so, it's really, really tough.
It was tough on me, and I didn't realize it until, and I don't necessarily know if I was wearing it as a badge of honor, but I will tell you, I was looking in my accounts. Did I reach executive platinum? Did I make this level? And that might have been a badge of honor, but I look back now and go, I don't need it anymore. I'm here. I'm at home. I got grandkids coming. So it's
I know you do, man.
Maybe it's like I need to focus on them.
Well, good for you. Good for you. So we're going to be wrapping up here. This is a long chat, and I want to make sure that I give you time to communicate. If there's anything that you feel that you would like to let people know about what you're doing, where you're going, a message besides the 3 words that, or I guess it would be 4, but that we're focusing on. What's your takeaway here? And then how do people find you if they need to? Not that anybody in this industry doesn't know how to find you. You're everywhere. I think there's 12 of you.
I wish, yeah, that would be great if I could just do that. First of all, thanks for this opportunity. I'm honored that you would have me on your podcast. Secondly, the words that follow, stop, collaborate, and listen in the song is ICE is back with a brand new invention. I wish I could say Tim is back with a brand new invention, but I'm not that person. All I can say is that of the things that we've talked about, supervisors are challenged daily. And what you end up finding in the workplace nowadays, in terms of my inspections and my on-site activities, is that a lot of employees are just warm bodies at this point, and we're not spending a lot of time mentoring them or preparing them or getting them the education that they need to do the work, which is psychosocial risk number 1, the lack of job description and ambiguity in the workplace. However, if we want those employees to speak up and pretty much emerge from the shadows of fear, which there's a lot of, we've got to work to listen to them. And how Stop, Collaborate, and Listen came out was just that. We need to listen better. And that goes across the board. Supervisors, listen to your bosses. Sometimes you deliver messages that wasn't clear in the first place, and you might have delivered the wrong message also. So listen to your managers, and more importantly, listen to your people. They've got something to say. And in this world of huge transformation and safety, the best people to learn from are your people. And to develop that learning environment, you got to stop what you're doing, look to see who you can collaborate with, and then eventually that listening piece starts to happen. So for me, that's huge. To me, that's what's going to be important for me as a strategy moving forward. And I hope it resonates with all of you personally. Now, how can you get a hold of me? There's all kinds of different ways. I'm on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with all of your listeners.
I'll put it in the notes here, all your LinkedIn stuff. Yeah.
And then my email is tim@safestart.com. Still keeping that email. Won't get rid of it. Reach out to me at any time. If you want to get a hold of me at work and you want to do some JLL business, that's tim.page-bottorff@jll.com. But Michael, thank you so much for this.
Hey, my pleasure, brother. Thank you. That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.